Before we look at the biblical literature of the Southern Kingdom and later, let us recap what we have learned so far. The nation of Israel was not born from one family, but consisted of different groups of people who settled in the highlands of Palestine around 1200 BCE. These groups came from different backgrounds, traditions, and beliefs. Eventually, only most popular of these traditions and beliefs would become part of the common history of the Israelites. The most prominent of these were the belief that Yahweh, a god which one of the tribes encountered on their travels, were a personal God who genuinely cared about their lives and happiness. For the first 200 years, the people living in the highlands consisted out of loose tribes who would occasionally join forces in a united front to protect themselves against the common enemy like the Philistines. As the leader of this united front, King Saul was chosen as their first official king. The United Kingdom lasted for another 200 years before it split into a northern and southern kingdom. According to biblical literature, this split happened because the northern tribes felt ill treated by King Solomon, the last king of the United Kingdom. Interestingly, we do not have archaeological evidence for the existence of the United Kingdom, but multiple artifacts for the existence of the kings of the Northern Kingdom. These archaeological finds led some scholars to conclude that much of the early history of Israel found in biblical literature were legendary and not historical in nature. Other scholars believe that there must be a trace of historical truth in the biblical literature, although it has been reinterpreted heavily by later biblical authors to convey specific political messages. It is interesting that not one book found in the Bible has been completed at this point in the Israelites' history. The beginnings of some biblical books, especially the first 5 books of the Old Testament known as the Pentateuch, can be traced to this early period of Israel's history. These early versions of biblical literature would later be interpreted and reinterpreted many times, depending on the circumstances the Israelites found themselves in. For example, biblical authors judged the early king's successes through a religious lens. After the United Kingdom split, the Northern Kingdom fell soon after. The Israelites tried to make sense of these developments. The biblical authors judged the kings by their religious fervor and concluded that these bad things happened to the Israelites because they were not faithful enough to their God Yahweh. This is a golden thread we find throughout the Old Testament. Obedience to Yahweh led to blessings, disobedience to punishment. It is only late in the Old Testament that this law of retribution was reconsidered and new ideas came to the front, often in direct opposition to early held beliefs. Spoiler alert, our next stop is the biblical literature that originated from the Southern Kingdom and the lessons they learned from the destruction of their northern neighbors.